Of Edie Adams and the keeper of all things Kovacs. Sit down.
I will.
So, Josh, what are you doing Monday night?
Funny you should ask, Bart. I'm going to be at Wild Detectives bookstore signing some copies of a book that I co-wrote about Ernie, doing a discussion and having a good time. So if anybody wants to come, tomorrow at 7.
All right. So do you want to talk a little bit about sort of Ernie's use of music and, what are the things that you think are really important about that?
Yeah, I mean, he had a definite sense of weird music.
What do you mean by weird music?
Well, he liked Esquivel, he liked things that were not exactly, top 40 chart busters. But he liked opera and he liked classical. So he would get records sent by the labels because he was using the music. So he would get all kinds of world music and stuff before he even had a term. And so he tried to use that, and he would see things through hearing them. And that's how he came up with a lot of these sketches.
Yeah. So how were they received at the time?
Well, Ernie was never hugely popular, but he always got great press. So the networks always wanted to have him because they knew that people were going to write about him, and they loved him, even if they didn't understand what he was doing.
So do you want to talk about how you see the line between Ernie and Jerry?
Well, if you were here last night and saw the Devo documentary, which was amazing, there is a very direct line to that sketch, which is Devo's idea of primates and 1950s, 60s philosophy about the de-evolution or evolution, however you want to, classify the Devo world. So it was really weird watching it because I was like, oh my God, there is a direct connection to this. And Gerald was always really nice and said some amazing things about Ernie and about the Nairobi Trio. But to see it yesterday was sort of like, oh, that's a bit of a revelation.
Yes, and there are primates that show up in the videos.
Absolutely, yes.
So if somebody out there wanted to see more Ernie Kovacs, where could one find them?
Well, you can still, there was a bunch of DVD sets that if you're into DVDs, you can still buy from Shout Factory.
What are these things?
DVDs.
DVDs?
They're not VHS, they're not, but if you want to go to ErnieKovacs.com, they're still there. But you can see them on Tubi, and you can see it on YouTube, and there's a bunch of different places you can check them out.
So, and if you're not really familiar with Ernie other than what you saw, it's just really a lot of fun. And look, we all need more fun in our lives, particularly in the next month, right? And take away some of the stress. And just sort of like watching like a real genius kind of inventing television in front of your eyes. It's truly amazing.
Well, the thing that just even sitting back there and watching it was like, this was primetime television.
Yeah.
I mean, this was literally on, like, I can't imagine what someone watching primetime television in 1960 thought when they were like, what is this? This is not Elliot Ness. This is not The Untouchables. What am I watching?
You're watching a kitchen come to life.
Yes, exactly. Kitchen symphony, right.
And that we look at that now and say like, oh, well, there's so many ways you could do that. None of that was easy.
Well, in fact, I was just mentioning to Jerry backstage, there's only about 3 or 4 cuts in that whole Kitchen Symphony. That was all done live. So the technicians had to actually rehearse it and figure it out live with the music. So it's not like there's any kind of editing, but there's a minimal editing. But it was like they actually had to do it like as it was happening.
So how did they do that?
Ernie had this amazing way where when he started working, if it wasn't finished, he just kept going. So he would work. The guys that worked for him, the technicians, loved working for him because Ernie at 8 hours would go, okay, we're going to go into double time. And then they'd go into 12 hours, they go to triple time. And then they would go into 16 or 20 hours, it was golden time. Yeah. So they were making huge amounts of money because they were working 24 hours in a row. But Ernie never understood the below the line and above the line, and he was the producer. He just said, let's just keep going. And then he would, have Chasen's, a very famous restaurant in LA, just bring food, and the crew loved that. And so he would say, like, you know, you can do this, but it's going to take some time.
And whatever little money he had left over, he probably lost in gambling.
He did. He was a serious gambler, literally a bad gambler. And actually, the guy in the scene where they're putting the chips in is a guy named Joe Michaelis.
Yeah.
And Joe Michaelis wanted to become an actor really bad. And Ernie knew him because he was a professional poker player. Mm-hmm. And he saw, and he'd play with Ernie, and he'd beat him every time. And Joe finally said to Ernie, look, I'll teach you how to play poker, but you got to put me on television. And that's how he got to be in this scene.
So the question is, did Ernie become a better poker player after he learned?
Ernie was like the kind of guy, and my mom would say this, he wasn't happy till he lost everything. Like most Gamblers Anonymous, they're never happy until they lose everything.
So in the studio, usually when you're working with technicians, they just say like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is their default position. How did, aside from them getting paid well for overtime, how did he talk them in to really tapping into their creativity towards his service?
Well, I think they were used to typical 50s sitcoms. You know, 3 cameras, this is just the day you do, and this is the lighting, and this is how it's done. He really pushed them, but in a way that was gentle and kind, and no, I really believe that you can do this. And I think that they saw an opportunity to do more than just what NBC or CBS or ABC was feeding them, which was, you know, a typical sitcom 3-camera shoot. You're done, you know, at 7 o'clock, and you go home and come back the next day. He challenged them to be more creative.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming here and sharing with us, and thank you for supporting Ernie Kovacs and keeping it live with all of us. It means an awful lot to us here in Dallas.
Thank you for doing this every year. I get a chance to talk about Ernie every year. Thank you, Bart.
Awesome. Before you leave, do you want to say anything about Jerry?
I'll just tell a really quick story about Jerry. So my mom was Edie Adams, and she was a really great person. She was a bit of a Pollyanna sometimes, and she was also, if you saw Almost Famous, she was kind of like the mom in Almost Famous. She was a little worried about everything. So I remember going to the Studio City movie theater with my mom and seeing something like Grease or, you know, Urban Cowboy or something, and before the movie, they showed the Devo movie, and I didn't know who Devo was when I was 10 or 11, and my mom certainly didn't know who Devo was, and we watched the video, and at the end of it, she basically turned to me and said, they're all on drugs. So that's my connection to Gerald.
So, do you think they were on drugs?
According to Edie, well, Edie thought that everything was acid rock. It could have been the Eagles or Joni Mitchell or Devo. It didn't matter. It was not, if it was 3 or 4 chords, that was not. She was a Juilliard person.
She was a classically trained.
Exactly.
All right. Let's bring him out here. Jerry Casale. Come on. There he is. Woo! So let's start with the very last image. Who was that, and how old are they now?
Yeah, let me figure that out. That was shot in '79. That was Bob Mothersbaugh's first daughter, Amy. So she was a year old there. We tied clear monofilament line to her wrists, put her in front of a blue screen, and hoisted her up over a pole on it so that she was on her tiptoes. We would get in big trouble now in a politically correct production now. I feel really bad, but Amy grew up and embraced that. You know, she took control of it, became part of her agency, and she's working in the art world. And she's what?
46.
Add it up, 79 to now.
46.
Thank you.
All right, somebody is a math major.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. So the first film, as we saw in the documentary, you guys got a job, made some money. So talk about how you conceptualize it, because this is the beginning of creating an image for the band, right?
Right, we weren't doing it in a cynical manner because there's no medium such as music video. There's no term for it. There was no MTV. people weren't talking about branding. They weren't talking about deconstruction. This was,
You guys had to figure out this language.
Right. What we were doing, we felt what we were doing is like what John Waters did in Baltimore. We thought we had this little troupe of people that were dedicated to trying to do the DIY, no money aesthetic and show people what we were thinking, show people who we were, show people our view, this apostle of de-evolutionary philosophy. And, we were having serious fun because, to be honest, I was really serious about what we were doing with the sense of humor.
Yes, serious and funny.
Just like Ernie.
Absolutely.
That's why I just laud him so much. I think he's incredible. It changed my life when I saw Ernie Kovacs on television.
So what things do you remember that you saw that influenced you from Ernie?
I just remember I was 12 years old, perfect age, because, here I am in this blue-collar, right-wing culture in Ohio, victim of the Catholic Church and authoritarian parents. And I'm reaching that age where I just disliked everything about them and their values. And
I can relate to that.
Television was a central part of every night after my dad came home from work. And they would love shows like The Honeymooners, which just, I was appalled by and freaked out by. I thought, these are horrible people and they're always arguing and this guy's a piece of shit. It's like, and then I Love Lucy, and that just really stressed me out because she was always doing screwed up things and Ricky was always mad. And I just thought, my parents like this stuff, right? Then Ernie Kovacs came on. And it was the only thing that we bonded over. They watched it and I watched it and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I remember I had this little toy guitar at the time. And when I saw the Nairobi Trio playing, solfeggio, I didn't know that it was a 250-year-old piece of classical music. I just thought it was incredible, and I started trying to pick it out on my toy guitar. And what I was watching was a guy that embraced the aesthetic of the absurd. And as I became more educated and discovered late in high school and then in college all about the radical reformation of art in the 20th century, starting with, Cubism and Surrealism, but most importantly, Dada. And the Dadaists embraced the position of the fool and injected humor because they were skewering the flawed duality of human nature in a really smart way, but acting foolish doing it.
Yeah, but the Dadaists never had to deal with Warner Brothers.
They never had to deal with Warner Brothers. And so Ernie was, what he was doing, and I'm sure he consciously knew what I knew before I knew it, and he was doing this marriage of high art and low commercialism. And that's exactly what Devo did. I would talk about that way before Jeff Koons ever talked about the high and the low. We were doing that on purpose. We were educated about culture and art history, but we were, applying it to junk pop culture. And Ernie did it before anybody. He was, amazing what he did in television, using the technology of the broadcast studio, using practical effects, using music, and this marriage of really low slapstick with really smart concepts. And that inspired me. That changed my whole life right there. It really did. And usually, people like Ernie are pioneers who get scalped and they get forgotten. But thanks to people like Josh and yourself, Ernie's not forgotten, and he's getting his rightful place in the history of pop art.
And hopefully people will see this and re-energize their own lives and make work that represents that attitude.
Yeah, he died way too young, Ernie.
That is incredibly true and very sad.
Yeah, so I can't think of a more appropriate award, because at first when I heard about an Ernie Kovacs Award, I thought, wow, that's really nuts, and that's like, exactly, that's why it's so great. I couldn't, it couldn't be more appropriate for a guy that's an apostle of de-evolution, right? In these de-evolutionary times, which, this shit's about to really hit the fan here. We're all going to see.
Yes, I think we have devolved much worse than when these videos were made.
Yeah.
So let's get back to talking about making that first video.
Oh.
Because this is where it all begins. You guys have costumes. Every video, what you're wearing, what the art direction is so really detailed. And then, coming up with, we got to do storyboards, and how do we think about it? And how do I get the band to do everything I want them to do? You're essentially creating this as you're going, and that sets the tone for so much of what you do for so long.
Yeah, luckily there was this fantastic collaborative group of very cool people at Kent State University. And I met this guy, Chuck Statler, in 1968, who was just nicking some classes here and there. He wasn't on a full program, but he had a 16 millimeter Bolex camera, and he had been making short little films. And our aesthetics were totally in line. We liked the same movies. We loved Stanley Kubrick, but we also loved Russ Myers. And we would go to the little art house, it was typical of independent film art houses, and we saw Beyond the Valley of the Dolls together.
And how many times have you seen that film?
Oh my God, I know. Maybe as many times as Scarface.
It's a great film.
A great film is a great film, and you don't watch it because you're trying to figure out the plot. You know everything, right? And you want to see it again. It's ritual.
Yeah. You see more in it every time you see it.
So with Chuck, he knew the craft of filmmaking. And so he really educated me. I learned quick about making films. I started making little shorts with him where I was actually in them. After he showed me one of his films that he made in Akron, Ohio, 1967, called Shit on a Stick, where he found some teenagers in the neighborhood where his dad lived, his mom and dad lived, and he paid them 25 cents to pick up dog poop on a twig, tree stem, and chase another kid with the poop. I thought, okay, we're going to do things together. And so it really started with Chuck embracing, the idea that I was spouting to him these Devo ideas starting around 1972, when I'd known him almost 4 years. And, he loved it. And that's about the time I started working with Mark Mothersbaugh, trying to find a musical application to de-evolution, because that started as a visual art thing with Chuck and I and John Zabrucki and my friend Bob Lewis. And they were all in line. We all shared this aesthetic. I'd spout my ideas, and it was like, oh sure. The same thing happened with Mark. It was like, okay, let's make de-evolutionary music. And we did. We said, okay, if it sounds like any genre, we throw it out. If it's not experimental, if it's not original, we throw it out. And we have to justify why we're even making a chord change. So we took it all the way to minimalism, where you didn't go, oh, okay, it's been 8 bars, now we have to go to the 5th, right? No, it was, why are you doing that? And it was really fantastic, because it was brutalism, it was minimalism, and we were getting really excited by it.
Those are the moments that are so many creative things are happening, and you sort of see the art form sort of emerging. And at the same time you're doing that with the music, are you starting to think about, okay, so on stage and in a video, we would want to wear these
Yeah,
things.
yeah. I was always thinking about it all at once. Devo wasn't even supposed to be a band. It was supposed to be just a multimedia art form because Chuck Statler and myself naively believed that the Laserdisc revolution was coming.
I think we all thought the Laserdisc revolution was coming.
And what we thought is, this is great. We'll make little shorts, and there'll be music-driven narratives, and there'll be like 10 or 12 of them on this Laserdisc, and we'll put out one a year. We'll be kind of like the Three Stooges of music, right? And Mark was totally down with that, and that's what we started off trying to do. We weren't trying to like be a band signed to a record label at all. That wasn't even the point. And so it was a meta kind of concept where the whole was supposed to be more than the sum of its parts. We really had enough of all these, preening rooster machismo groups with the, latex pants and the platform shoes, and look at me, and I got hair, and I'm going to go like this. We wanted to do something that went beyond the individual. It wasn't about the cult of personality. It was about this big idea. That's why, just like anyone in theater or film, traditionally all the way back to the Greeks, uses masks, costumes, to divorce yourself from everyday reality and show somebody an alternate reality that's bigger than the self. And that's what Devo was all about.
I mean, and all the videos and all the performances, all of that visual information is so key to that.
Yeah, we were communicating it pretty well. And of course, we were communicating it well enough to really get hated. Devo was very polarizing.
Well, if you're going to do something new and different,
you're going to get hated.
Right. I don't think everybody loved the Dadaist at the beginning.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't.
So if people are hating you, you're doing something right.
That's what we thought too. Given our environment there in Akron, Ohio, and surrounded by like all these, people that was totally anti-intellectual and totally kind of right-wing, and we were surrounded by evangelical televangelists like Ernest Angley and Rex Humbard with the Cathedral of Tomorrow, and all the townspeople believed in that.
We have some of them down here in Dallas too.
Yeah. And it was horrific and frightening. So we kind of, like any art group does, they bond together because they're outsiders, right? You're disenfranchised. And we didn't feel alienated, we felt alien. We felt like we were just aliens in a spaceship watching humans and observing them, because it was so horrific and such a joke, such stupidity. So Devo was basically like anti-stupid, but acting stupid with a sense of humor to convey that.
Right. So getting back to the first film, because the first film is so important because it really sets the path. So when you set out to do that, you had multiple songs done by then, right?
Yeah, we did. And
why did you choose those two?
It was driven by money. Mark and I started a business at a shopping mall called Quaker Center in Akron, Ohio, and I named it and I created the graphics for it. It was called Unit Services, and we were just printing T-shirts and designs for local businesses that wanted them, right? And the idea was to try to make enough money to make this first movie. And
that's a brilliant idea.
We scraped together $3,000 and sat down with Chuck, because at that point, again, Chuck had the camera, Chuck had the lights, and Chuck knew more about the mechanics of filmmaking from making these industrial films that he was getting paid for than I did. I knew what I wanted to see. I had all the scenes sketched out and the descriptions for the storyboards, but we didn't know how to make it happen with the budget. So we had to pare down the ideas. It started with more than 2 songs, and it started with the Smart Patrol song. And that was a big epic. Too many scenes, too many locations, had to throw that out. So it was like, okay, we're working guys, and we're in the factory at Goodyear, and it's time to get off work, and we leave and get in our beat up car, and we go to the sad little basement club where we play. And we used Secret Agent Man because we felt that by covering a song and mutating it, that it would communicate well to an audience what Devo was all about, because they'd have a frame of reference.
It's sort of familiar and unfamiliar at the same time.
Right. It's like, in other words, those assholes did that, to Secret Agent Man? What the hell? Where'd they get off? That's what it was like. And then, of course, we had to have the name check song. We had to have the identity song of Jocko Homo, Are We Not Men, We Are Devo. And that was shot in the governance chambers at Kent State University because I was a graduate student and I'd known all these people so long that I got it free. Mm-hmm. And
so you actually did ask permission?
Oh yeah, we had to for that one. All the other locations, I lied. I went and I told them it was a fraternity prank. We actually used the boardroom lunchroom at McDonald's across from Firestone, across from Goodyear, to shoot where Boogie Boy meets General Boy, and General Boy addresses the crowd and gives the manifesto. Now it can be told. That was actually a room where executives were allowed to have private lunches at McDonald's upstairs and have business meetings while they did it. And so we told him it was a fraternity prank. And Mark's father showed up in the World War II general's jacket and hat, and Mark showed up in the Boogie Boy mask.
He is so good.
We had about 20 minutes before they booted us out. We got like 2 takes.
Right. Get it. Hurry up. So you shoot the film.
Yeah.
And then you edit. And in the first time you edit a film,
yeah,
you kind of see what you could do and how it works. What did you learn when you're like sitting with Chuck looking at this material?
I learned that I was going to have to look through the camera before any shot was ever taken again. Because I'd go to Chuck, we had the description and we'd talk all about it, but then I'd go, did you get it? There was no monitor.
Right.
There was nothing for me to see, right? He's the only one that saw anything. And then you find out, oh, we didn't get that coverage. That wasn't the shot. That's not right. And Mark's not in sync. What are we going to do, right? And we were editing with Chuck's friend Dale Cooper, and it was old school,
Film.
16 millimeter, cut it on the table, hang the strips up.
Right.
Yeah.
There's 2 frames on the floor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You had to know what you were doing. Luckily, he did technically know, but what I mean is, you can't go back and look at options like that became the rule of thumb. Agencies always go, give me 100 options, right? You didn't have 100 options. You went like that, and that was your option. You're done. So it was interesting.
So you learned that it's important for you to take control of what you see in the viewfinder.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
And not
you get less naive. Yeah.
But that's kind of important. I mean, you knew what you wanted.
Yeah. We knew, that's what we knew. It was very intentional on that level. And you get a facsimile, you start off with the big idea and the high hope, and then you get down to reality. It's like, what can you really deliver? And that's what happened with Devo in general. And of course, the Laserdisc revolution never happened because there were 3 competing technologies.
Absolutely.
And each one had its own library, and you couldn't get the other titles. If you had the Pioneers disc, you could get these. If you had the RCA disc, you could get those, but you couldn't have both. And it was a case of stupid capitalism destroying the marketplace. And it went away until it kind of came back as video discs like 12 years later, right? And so the next thing we do is play live. And record company people come to see us.
So how did you get the idea to send this to the Ann Arbor Film Festival? Because that's kind of important.
That was always our idea. That was an idea that Chuck actually proffered first. Because again, we would all go see these art films that toured these independent film houses, and the Ann Arbor Film Festival was always something we would see.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate of experimental film.
Yeah, and we would see the one out of New York where we got to see all the Kuchar brothers films.
Yeah.
Yeah. Babo 76 with Sandy Nelson in it, and great stuff, you know.
So, so then, what was the first one that you directed yourself?
Well, that I got credit for directing
Yes,
was,
yes.
well, was the very next
The first one, you looked at the viewfinder.
Right, in other words, oh, wait a minute, the guy with the camera isn't really the director, he's the cinematographer. It was the very next one.
Which was?
Satisfaction.
Right.
Satisfaction. And Richard Branson of Virgin Records gave us $5,000.
Right, and then screwed you.
Yeah, that screwed us. And we shot it in one day in Akron, Ohio, except for the scenes involving the dancer, Spaz Attack, the punk dancer that does the flips on the carpet.
Yeah, the flips, yeah.
That was an insert, you know, shot on a separate day.
So what was it like taking control over all of this?
Not fun. I mean, you're the guy in the hot seat.
Right.
A director takes responsibility and blame because everybody likes to like go, "Hey, I didn't make that decision. It was him," right? If something doesn't work. But I was more than willing to do that.
And then the other thing is that the band is a band. So as you're playing the music, there's a lot of like togetherness, right?
Yeah.
But when it's the video,
Right.
you're telling everybody what to do.
But not in a dictatorial way. They were all on board. Luckily, we had two sets of brothers, and they understood Crazy Jerry and Crazy Mark, right? And it was shorthand. You didn't have to explain yourself because they'd grown up with Mark and I. So it was like if you said something, everybody was more than ready to do it. In fact, we all wore a lot of hats. Bob Mothersbaugh and Bob Casale helped with all these productions in really essential material ways, like going and get things or describing something they had at home that we could use in a shot, or finding something in a store that we had overlooked and bringing it to the table because they were applying themselves to the aesthetic all the time.
So when is the first music video that you had a bit more of a budget to work with?
As Devo?
As Devo.
Because it was always very low budget. I think probably not until Beautiful World, I spent $25,000, which...
I just love that. Every time I watch that,
Yeah.
there's something really special about that.
Well, it's my personal favorite because that's one where, as Mark and I were writing the song and I wrote the lyrics, started fitting them over the progression, I knew exactly the video that I wanted to make. And I started spouting openly because I'd always like share ideas whether people wanted to hear them or not. But I started telling Mark, oh, we could do this and then we'd see this. And he loved it. And he loved it because it was a found footage idea. And he had loved what Bruce Conner had done with Mongoloid. And so it was the first time we were going to do that. But it took like a 4-day trip to New York for me to go to these film houses and search through microfiche and then pay a fee to view it and then pay a fee to buy 100 feet of it. And you're doing it with in mind what you want to see cut together. But it's kind of hit and miss. You're trying to find things that you may not find.
Right.
But it costs $25,000 for the rights.
Believe me, I know this very well.
Well, now it'd be $300,000.
Well, or you could claim fair use.
You could try.
You could try.
You could try.
But what I find really interesting here is that as you're doing the music, you're seeing the images. And that's really important, that the music video is so much integral to the sense of the band that the music and the pictures like work together.
Yeah, and that's the truth. I think there were even occasions where Mark and I had video ideas that preceded the writing of the song.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's what happened with Peekaboo.
Oh,
Yeah.
makes sense.
So that's what would excite us, is the originality and experimentation, and then trying to work within these ridiculous limitations of budget and time, and technology.
So there are two of the videos here that have direct ties to Dallas. So there's Love Without Anger.
Yeah.
And how did you get involved with Reverend Ivan Stang?
Right. Otherwise
Church of
known
the
as...
Sub-Genius. And did you all see that there's a picture of Bob in there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So Reverend Stang, otherwise known as
Doug Smith.
Doug Smith. We met him early on, and we loved the Subgenius Foundation, and we loved the Stark Vista removal paper, and we just resonated. You know, our aesthetics were definitely in line, and he was experienced at single frame animation, and we knew we wanted what we wanted Barbie and Ken to do, and he offered to do it very cheaply. And so we sent him storyboards and plotted it out, and then he did the single frame animation here in Dallas. And we loved it. You know, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really
it was fun working with him.
It worked really well. And then, Are You Experienced?
Right. I know, that was supposed to actually be shot at some facility here in Dallas.
Studios
Trammell Crow owned.
Yes. We were expecting it to be shot.
Yeah, and that, once again, what happened there was a native of Dallas, Bob Stevens, was a very strange, enigmatic guy, a big man.
Yes.
Big man. He came on strong and said he had all this money and wanted me to plot out a full-length video release of the whole Shout record, which I spent weeks doing, and then in the end, all he had was $50,000. And we already knew we wanted to shoot in 35 millimeter film, and we started plotting it out. We couldn't leave town. So, and we needed Warner Brothers to add $50,000. And they were not too happy about that. And I had to talk Jeff Aroff into it, who was the video commissioner at the time. And so Bob Stevens put in 50, and Warner's put in 50, and we had to shoot it in our rehearsal studio that was connected to a big props company called Modern Props, owned by a friend of mine, John Zabrucki. And so that was the cheap way we could do it. And so yeah, we had Graham Whiffler as the cinematographer, and we tracked down all the original, I don't know what they are. They're like convex dishes that they would use at the Joshua Light Show.
The Petri dishes with
that's it. Viscosity fluids in
right,
them.
yeah.
And they were all in a barn in Santa Barbara. And this guy we knew, Gary Jacket, that called himself General Jacket, had a friend, and we got them to bring them to LA and do the show while we were on wires floating with the inflatable suits. It was hilarious. And I think the shocking part of that video, though, the really shocking part was we had seen all this publicity in magazines about this guy that was a Jimi Hendrix impersonator.
Yeah.
And got all these good reviews. I'd never met him, and I got his contact information because we wanted Jimi Hendrix to come out of his coffin and play the lead.
And it's such a great shot when he comes out. It's just magnificent.
And again, wearing the many hats, here Mr. Director has to go to the airport and pick him up. I'm the driver. And I'm like back at a time when you could even go to the gate, right? There was no security. You didn't need a boarding pass or anything. I don't want to wait around, so I'm going right to where they're coming off the plane at the gate, and I don't see anybody that could be this guy. And suddenly I get tapped on the shoulder by a little white guy with curly hair. And he goes, "I'm Randy Hansen." And I go, "What?" It's like, I'm shitting my pants because he does this thing in blackface. And I'm like, we're going to be in trouble, because even in 1984, that wasn't cool.
Yeah, imagine doing that now.
No. and he had the rubber rings to stretch his nose, and he had the wig, and all this. It took him 3 hours to get into this outfit and become Jimi Hendrix. But when he walked out in front of the camera, it was like, oh my God. This is beyond, something that's politically incorrect.
So now you're going to go home and try and look for that music video, and you will see some things you didn't think you would ever see. So we have some time for some questions. So I can't really see it. So anybody got a question? Like stand up. We got somebody with a microphone.
Yell.
Yes, right here.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, there's microphones in the front.
Yeah,
Yes.
there might be one over there.
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Jerry, I love you. I love your band. I have a question about, you were mentioning earlier about how Devo felt alien, not alienated.
Right.
When Whip It was huge, you guys were supposed to be on the Midnight Special that was hosted by Lily Tomlin, and she didn't receive, she didn't understand the satire of Devo as a band, especially that song and that music video. Have you made amends with her? Because I know you guys got canceled from that episode. Have you explained to her that, like, the irony, I guess, of Devo and...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great.
So you got together and it all worked out.
Well, yeah, I think what you're talking about is Devo goes from this polarizing a group that's not being embraced by mainstream culture or radio, and then suddenly what are they called? A radio programmer. When before Clear Channel, there were regional radio programmers. A guy named Cal Rudman in Florida actually listens to the record, and Warner's is pushing "Girl You Want," but it stiffs. So they're out. Warner's is gone. And this guy, Cal Rudman, had the Cal Rudman tip sheet, the Monday morning tip sheet down in Florida. And he had about 40 DJs that he could tell what to play. He decided Whip It was a great song. And he made his DJs play it. And it spread within a week straight up the coast to New York. And a major FM station took it on there because of the Cal Rudman report. And suddenly, we had to stop playing the clubs we were playing and recalibrate the tour because we had to book bigger venues, and suddenly we're being played on the radio, and within 6 months we're seeing amazing royalties for the first time. And it was strange because every radio programmer that would interview us go, "Are you still whipping it?" Right? Or, they thought it was about S&M. And this is a case where we hadn't made a video. We had made a video to Freedom of Choice and Girl You Want,
Right.
using video technology that I was enamored to at the time. But no one in the band thought Whip It was a hit. And no one at the record company thought so, and our management didn't think so. So that's one where we hadn't planned a video. And now that Warner's goes, you gotta make a video. Here's the people that thought we were stupid for making videos. And now it's like, oh no, you gotta make a video. And that's when I said, let's give them what they want. Like, let's do exactly, these guys think the song is about masturbation. They think it's about S&M. We're gonna give them what they want. And
with a twist.
Right. And so we just showed them exactly what we thought they could stomach, but we were making fun of it with cowboys. This is when Reagan was starting his big Make America Great campaign on his way to winning in November. And he was showing all these, videos of himself at the ranch at Santa Barbara riding on horses, him and Nancy, and touting the westerns that he had been in. And so we were, we were skewering that mythology, the Old West and the big sky and the corral. And people loved it for all the wrong reasons. And they didn't get the humor, to believe it or not. They didn't get the humor.
Yeah, it just seems like Lily Tomlin, strong feminist woman, didn't understand the irony of the music video. And I think she took it the wrong way. So I don't know if you guys have made amends or...
So did you have the conversation with her?
Yeah, has she come
after that?
Realize the irony?
With Lily Tomlin?
Oh, yeah. I tried. She wasn't buying it, She saw that video and said, they can't be on my show. And I talked to her, and she was just curt. When she's not in character, she's a very frightening, imposing person. And that was that. Yeah, that was that. Yeah, and irony is... that's a lost art form in this culture. I mean, you might as well just, pack it in if you're going for irony these days.
Some people just won't get it.
No.
They just won't.
No.
Do we have any other questions here? We have microphones here. Yes, come. Brandon, don't fall down.
All right, everybody knows Devo is this visual, art band. Somehow what gets lost is just what a great freaking band you guys are.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's true. No critics ever talked about that. They didn't.
Yeah, they think of you as a synth band, but the great guitar parts like on Gut Feelings so my question is, what was the background musically for you guys that you could put this amazing music, behind the visuals? What was your background for that?
And also drumming. The drumming.
Oh my God. I mean, really, Alan Myers, oh my God. He was a special drummer. And like most of the best drummers of rock and roll history, he was a jazz drummer. And if Charlie Watts was a jazz drummer, and Ginger Baker was a jazz drummer.
Yeah.
And, he goes on and on. What was that?
Josh Freese.
Oh, Josh Freese, amazing drummer. But Alan Myers was a human metronome. I mean, that guy. We had to. We didn't have to. We agreed in maybe 2004 to do a parody lyric over Whip It for a commercial, and. They were really adamant that they wanted the original Whip It. So we went back to the tapes. And because this is being cut to a commercial, we had to beat map it. Now, we weren't using, at that time, any click tracks or anything. It was all live. And we were so tight, we were like the white James Brown. And Alan Myers, when we beat mapped, we soloed his drums. This is the truth. It only varied in the middle on that break where it goes da 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 da. I say whip it good. It only varied 2 BPM during that period. The rest, it started and ended at the same BPM like he was a machine. And so there was no problem syncing it up to the video that they wanted us to use. Bob Mothersbaugh came from straight rock and roll. He loved Slade, and he loved Chuck Berry, and he loved Keith Richards and the Rolling Stones. I came from a kind of playing like dirty, like John Lee Hooker blues. I loved John Lee Hooker, and I loved Magic Sam, and I loved Willie Dixon, and then I modified my style to fit, Devo's precision. And Mark came from prog rock. He was imitating Yes. And that's why we just agreed we'd get rid of all these things that we came from and find something new.
That merged all of them.
Right, like Tabla Rosa, start over. But I think we could all play, and that's what you see when you see videos of us live back then. It's really precise.
Very tight.
Really tight. And we play well. And no critic ever mentioned that we could really rock out live and really do it.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't bring it up.
In the documentary we watched yesterday, when you're talking about some of the commercial films, the Honda commercial.
Yeah.
About all of you looking exactly the same, and it's supposed to be about being
Yeah. Express your individuality, yeah.
Express your individuality by being the same.
Yeah.
How did they come up with that and actually pay you to do that?
They didn't. I did, and we talked to the director, who was a famous commercial director, and he talked the agency into letting us do it that way. Because if you watch the other commercials they did with like Lou Reed and others, there's no thread that connects ours to theirs at all. And once again, it was the humorous irony of us talking about express your individuality and being totally like robot conformists, right?
I mean, it's just, that is Dada.
It was. There was no individuality at all, right? Except being iconoclastic, right?
So what was it like to direct music videos for
Other people? Really frustrating, because you try to take your Devo hat off and do for that band and their aesthetic and their reality what you did for your own, but do it for them. And you get hired on the strength of what you write. So you write these 10-page treatments. They always have you competing with 6 other directors. And so when you get the commission, when you get tapped to do it, you think you won. You think this is great. They want to do this idea. No, they don't. They don't want to do the idea. And the manager has a say. And the lead singer's girlfriend has a say. And
that's the worst.
In the by the end, the video commissioner at the label, you don't even recognize your idea. And then you're told how to edit it. I mean, when I did Silverchair, those kids were bossed around like they were in prison. It was scary. And then the manager just said, Daniel has to be in close-up 51% of the cuts in the length of time of the video. I go, but that's going to take the whole concept off the table. We can't show all these things happening. He goes, I don't care. And that was that. It was like they took it away from me and re-edited it. It made no sense. And those things happened over and over and over. I think the only time it didn't happen was Soundgarden. They were very cool, great to work with, even though at that point they weren't talking to each other. And I ended up doing the last song they ever did together. They'd all have their own dressing room and their own handler. And then they had a manager that said, don't ask them to come on set until you know you're going to roll, because they don't want to be standing there with each other and not doing anything. And it was a 5-minute and 20-second long dirge called Blow Up the Outside World. And had $450,000 budget. with composites and explosions and
Right.
yeah.
High production value, but high annoyance.
It was tedious, but each one of them individually, completely cooperative, articulate, nice, easy to deal with in their dressing room.
But you wouldn't know anything about bands having internal problems.
No, I wouldn't. No.
We have a question over here.
This is actually a great segue into the question I have, which is being in a band with two sets of brothers, are there any incidents of sibling warfare that went on?
Of what?
Sibling warfare.
It actually, for most of the time, for most of the years until Devo started to lose its purpose and its mission and quit being meta, quit being collaborative, and started being like, autocratic machine music, the brother thing was an advantage, as I mentioned earlier. We all were on the same page and didn't have to explain ourselves. And it made things really fun until they weren't fun.
So, do we have any other questions? Two. Okay, go for it.
Hi, Jerry.
Hey.
Many people saw Whip It first for their first introduction to Devo.
Wait. No. Many people did not.
Yeah.
But some people did.
But my first introduction was a VHS cassette that my parents had called A Music War.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And if you have any stories about that, you have any of the other peer bands that you think were really good? And that being said, is there any newer bands that you like now?
Good
So,
question. Is there a band you
two-part
like
question
now?
there.
That's interesting. I do hear things.
Put your mic up.
That's interesting. I do hear things that I like, and a lot of times I don't know who it is that I'm hearing. It's so strange now because it used to be, because of the way the business worked, the cream rise to the top, like the best stuff, you got to know about it and hear it, and they got successful and you knew who they were. And now some of the best music I hear is being totally ignored. It has nothing to do with airplay, nothing to do with commercial success. So I hear things, but there's not a body of work behind it. Like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s even, if you liked one song from a band and you bought the record, you liked 4 or 5 of them at least, because there was a cohesive body of work. And then it just became something like a group would take, work with a producer and spend a lot of money and time on one cut to get it, to the ears of those who are, tastemakers. And then the rest of it has nothing to do with that. So the only thing I've seen recently that kind of blew my mind in a way was King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard. Because they are over the top, and they play 5 or 6 different styles in a 3-hour concert and do it all well. And there's no front man really, and it's like a big rave. They're kind of like the good part of a jam band. You know what I'm saying? I don't really like Fish. But I'm telling you, King Gizzard is worth it.
All right, so listen to that when you go home. Last question.
No pressure. Thanks for being here. Bart sort of touched on this earlier. I saw the doc a while ago, and I was excited to learn more about Devo and the evolution. And I started talking about Honda, navigating the commercialization of Devo versus what you guys set out to do. What was that like? And Warner Brothers contracts, was that always the goal? I don't think so. You've already spoken to this. I'm just trying to merge the two things of what I knew Devo before I saw the documentary, and what I grew up watching was MTV videos and thinking, I remember that Are You Experienced video as a kid, thinking this is fucking amazing. So
it's really about the balance between the commercial stuff of Devo and the art of that. Is that what James you're getting at? And which is such a difficult thing with the band over the years. Your constant battles with Virgin and Warner and all of that. But yet you survived and did it at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you have to expect that business is going to do what business does. Nobody can kill you except yourselves. It's always about the artist remaining true to themselves. And if you think about it, all the artists that you like the most, music artists, they did combine commerciality with great songwriting and great sounds, thrilling performances. And I don't think they were necessarily doing it in a cynical way. They hit a groove and they meshed those two opposing forces. But what happened with a band is they quit being that band and they start just phoning it in. It's on rote memory and it all starts to sound like the same and tired. And that's because when they make money, maybe the lead singer gets lead singeritis and stops collaborating, stops communicating, and just makes it impossible to be creative. And so they quit being creative and the songs quit being so good. I think for a long time, Devo did as good as we could for as long as we could.
I think sometimes when you get successful, the egos get in the way.
They sure do. They ruin it.
And also speaking, James, to your question, it's worth pointing out that most of the commercial aspects of the band were on your shoulders. I mean, you work those contracts. You work with these people.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think you got the credit for all that work.
No. In fact, you kind of get discredited. Like, oh, this guy's like a double agent. He's cooperating with the suits. It's and you have no choice. This is what you have to do.
And thank you for doing it. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for making all these videos. Thank you for coming here. So what we're going to do right now is watch the short reel of the history of the Ernie Kovacs Award, and then I'm going to give you the award.
Oh boy!
All right,
I can't wait.
So let's roll this reel.
I know I'm supposed to say something funny, but I'm truly honored. It totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. And I hope someday that Devo's legacy could be thought of in the same way as Ernie's is, and that there could be a de-evolution award someday. I know, he died way too young, Mr. Ernie. He died before JFK was assassinated, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, he might have done a skit about the Texas Book Suppository. Oh, okay. Not funny.
We could take you there tomorrow morning. Jerry, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I've so much enjoyed having you around.
Thank you, Bart, and thank you, Josh Mills, and all the team that you work with. They're great people, really great people. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and we've had a lot of wonderful people work really, really hard for this event, and thank you all. Thank you so much for coming. This is such a great thing for us in the city. It's such a great thing to honor Ernie, and it's so wonderful to have you here. I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you guys. And Mark Ridlin will be playing some music out, and so we can hang out and have a good time. And thank you again. Thank you so much.